the conventional illusion of human experience. It is grounded on a notion of inherent existence. So there is a sense of there being someone, not just in yourself, but in others when you interact with them, like that there's someone home, basically. And we tend to project this type of illusion of human experience or human being on ourselves and on others that is based on beliefs about what the human experience is, socially and culturally conditioned ideas about it, which are all grounded on the notion of inherent existence, that there being, someone inhabiting the human experience, right? And it's a lot more complex, this projection, because it is grounded on our emotional body, on the subtle body, on the energetic body. So at the core of the human experience, in a conventional world, there is a kind of psychic center, which is felt very viscerally and very, psychologically, energetically, spiritually, oftentimes at the level of the heart. But this psychic center, it's actually just like a complex structure of energetics. Like at the core of it, that there is the raw material of our childhood woundings, pretty much for everyone. For some, it's more obvious that that's the case, and for others, it's more hidden. It's more buried. It's more repressed. But that's the case for everyone. So we have these childhood wounds of unworthiness and inadequacy, not being good enough, not being lovable, and that merging bond with the parental figure being somehow damaged or broken or not really lived in a safe way in our childhood. So that leaves a kind of rupture in our emotional structure, in our psychology, when that bond is it's there's many ways to understand what that is. I'm not going to go into that, but oftentimes what we then end up doing in our childhood, in our adult life, is that we're like looking to recreate that bond, that type of like deep connection, merging bond with another person or another beings, basically another human beings. So we have this psychic structure there, this, you could say, the core of the human experience, and then on top of that, the narrative self is being formed, which is of course a mental construct, but it operates centered around this energetic core. So that's why it's not just a cognitive illusion, the sense of self. It's very bound and grounded and kind of impregnated to our emotional body as well. So there's this like kind of mutuality between the emotional body and the narrative self, how they kind of fuse together. You can't really separate them, actually. So in our adult life, when we then search for these type of connections and kind of relive our childhood wounds, it's a never-ending loop, right? It's a never-ending loop, and some people then enter in the psychological investigations and deep shadow work, and that can definitely bring some self-awareness, self-reflection, deeper understanding what's actually happening there, and more lucidity, sobriety regarding human relationships and what love is, what friendship is, what connection is. Um, so that can be helpful, but it won't really transform that fundamental paradigm of operating, which is the self, which is the inherent existence of human experience, or the assumption of the inherent existence of self and of others. So yeah, there can be this moment that comes on the path, on the process, when this starts to become clear that when we interact with others, we're not really interacting with an entity and being. You know, it's more like a complex um, like psychological platform of different type of realms that seem to be like spontaneously dreaming themselves through this human experience. And some of these realms can be quite dark, like it almost seems like that the whole ego structure, it's a kind of preta, like a hungry ghost. So it can be quite devastating, when you have this illusion of humanness and interacting with others, and then suddenly tapping into this dimension that what you imagine was, someone who's inherently good and inherently existent and present and capable of I don't know, empathy or compassion or self-reflection or self-awareness, that's just not there, but instead you're just meeting these type of almost like dark energy that is collective. It's not personal, it's not an entity, but that's what the mind identification is not just some sort of sterile or clinical sense of dissociation and disconnection from reality. It's a very psychological condition, like a very powerful psychological condition, animated by the emotional body and animated by the creative potential of our psyche, or for the human psychology, which appears in these very animated and vivid and vibrant realms that can be quite dark, and some of them can be apparently more functional and more kind of clean, but they, from the awakened perspective, they appear equally kind of distorted or fundamentally confused and um, trapped. Some of these realms, like called cod realms, or in the Buddhist psychology, and they really are exactly the same devouring hunger of desperation and unfulfilled childhood needs, and like complex survival mechanisms and defense structures that are operating there. They just appear in a little bit more functional and apparently shiny form than some of these other realms that can be quite shocking for people to encounter. which for an ordinary mind appears like addiction or suicidal tendencies or deep depression or just really intense suffering, trauma. Um, like incapacity to function in the society. So that's those kind of realms are then often looked down upon from these places in our psychology that have weaponized the rational mind and the intellect into a position of superiority, where these deep wounds have been so buried that the person is able to function and be apparently happy and doing great. But these intellectual shields are, just another form of that fundamental neurosis or confusion, like this oceanic, like suffering. Yeah, like you can when you tap into it's like so powerful, like in the human psychology. So some people are not so much in touch with it, and the virtual reality, it works for them. It shows the dream of a happy life, or at least somewhat happy life. So the discontent is very minimal. So it doesn't really like penetrate their field. This immense cry of help. Like the pain body. All these darker realms and the psyche that is trapped in those dark realms. But from the perspective of liberation, those places are actually the most potent and fruitful, like where the liberation is very, very close because the suffering is so intense. So there is often a completely different kind of willingness to completely exit that whole paradigm of human conditioning, which is a terrifying jump to make. It's a terrifying jump to the unknown, to exit that wheel of becoming, say the bardo of becoming. So that's gonna initiate a very powerful process, sometimes referred to as awakening, but not in the sense that it's marketed in the mainstream spirituality, as some sort of trophy for the ego or for some sort of sense of self or some sort of inherent existence that will get to enjoy that. This is very different, and it's not nihilistic, it's not dark, like it's very beautiful. It's radically open-ended and indeterminate and compassionately responsive, but um, for this mainstream spirituality of love and light, this looks like a catastrophe or calamity, as U.J. Krishnamurti described it. It's like fitting description, calamity for this type of radical deconstruction of the human conditioning and human psychology, and deconstruction may just sometimes sound like removal or annihilation or destruction, which it is. Like there is this aspect of subduing activity that is very much part of a genuine awakening process, but there is also the aspect of nourishment and creativity and care, pacifying, enriching. And this process that initially may appear like a dissolution into void, it actually transforms your life and your being into a charnel crown. And that's a powerful place to live. That's not the kind of void that is just absence. It's not just the absence of narrative self or human conditioning. It's a completely different way of experiencing reality. That it's very full, very vibrant. But the fullness is not that type of clean emptiness, fullness, like they often discuss in non-duality. It's the fullness of finally dropping the veils of illusion and seeing the human condition for what it is. That no one is really home, but it's a very creative condition for these psychological realms to function and to transform and to purify and to dance as the enlightened wisdom play. So this charnel crown is our human neurosis. It's our human neurosis, and it's the raw material for the wisdom of the unborn, of the unconditioned mind stream. So we don't achieve realization by escaping the humanness, by transcending the humanness, by pretending that it's not there. Like the only way to truly die into this freedom is to fully acknowledge, our situation, our neurosis, the human condition. So seeing through the inherent existence is the key in all of this. So you need no self inside, or the inside of shunyata, emptiness, to experientially realize this. And it's not just some instant groundbreaking shift in perspective after which you're done. It's a lifelong journey of alchemization and integration, and like a continuous process of self-offering. Like it continues. The realization work, like enlightenment, is just the beginning. Like it continues from this place where emptiness is the living reality of the relative life, and everything that happens in your life is a perfect material for the deepening and clarification and refinement of the insights. It's like a giant co-creative, co-emergent mandala that is functioning. So many times we will encounter fear. We will encounter this type of dark energies that are part of the collective neurosis, or the fertile ground for the collective neurosis. But from the mind of awakening, from the mind of enlightenment, these energies are seen to be, empty and vivid and clear display. So from the perspective of dualistic mind, it looks like a complex, multidimensional reality of good and bad, of light and dark. But when we enter non-duality experientially, yeah, we go beyond. We go beyond all pairs of opposites. And they still function in our relative experience, which is made of the complex interaction of the opposites. So experientially, how this may feel like this absolute insight. I don't know if insight is the right word for it, because it's very energetic, the experience. It's like your mind stream fully opens. It feels like the central channel is just wide open. So the insight unlocks it. Maybe that's a way to say it. The insight and the way it functions in our relative human life. But the unconditioned mind, it's not an insight, it's not a realization, is nothing that the words can really explain. But only from that place, like, do we find that absolute stillness, like unshakable stillness, deep, deep, fathomless, bottomless stillness that can perfectly hold space for all of this, like all of this, what I was describing, the human condition, the display of the light and dark, the display of the neurosis as nothing other than the enlightened mind. Like without emptiness, it's too much. Without the insight of emptiness, it's too much for the psyche to directly encounter this and drop the veils. Like it can resort in like fracture or overwhelm or even a kind of spiritual trauma. But when it comes together, this deconstruction, with the genuine realization of emptiness, the shock is held within this infinite, like all-encompassing love of what the emptiness is. And our body mind acclimates, and it processes this, you could say, shock calamity of liberation. This is at least an attempt to highlight some aspects of this reality that is like profoundly and radically beyond the rational mind. It's transrational, and that doesn't exclude rational mind. So transrational is not irrational. It includes the rational mind when it's needed, but at the same time, it utterly, utterly deconstructs it and reveals this reality where there are no fixed reference points, and that cannot be comprehended by the human conditioned mind. So it has to break, that apparent conditioning, that apparent container, that apparent veil. So realization, it's like continuous work in a way, but without zero doership, without zero agency. Like, at least there's no agency in any conventional or individual sense. Like, yeah, there's total exertion, but that's a very different type of sense of um, activity. But like, when people think that the awakening is just some sort of magical free pass out of the human experience, and where you just get to have a comfortable life where you never feel anything challenging or process anything challenging, and you get to this place where you are arrived and done, and just super equanimous and detached, and not touched by anything anymore. Yeah, I think that's some sort of fantasy of a monastic idea of enlightenment, like some sort of echo of that kind of transcendental uh, ideal of what is this. And it still echoes in the collective, in the collective non-dual scene, that's what awakening is. You just have to shift, and then that's it. But in my view, that kind of awakening, even if it's genuine, it's somehow profoundly disconnected from the world, from the embodied experience, from the earth. Like, there is this split there, um, that has not been resolved experientially. And resolving that experientially, it's not a rational thing. It's not any kind of choice in a conventional sense that anyone could do. But traditionally, that's called the birthing of the absolute bodhicitta, when we realize that our awakening, our realization, it cannot exist individually. It cannot exist like apart from the whole. It's total illusion. It's a fabrication. It's some sort of fabricated state. So relinquishing that kind of position of invulnerability, of kind of like void as something transcendental. So fully relinquishing that experientially, it's a profound act of love, actually, and heart opening, like opening the heart of compassion, like truly, like not just an experience, not just a glimpse, like a permanent, radical heart opening of this vast, vast primordial space